All right, let's do this. I'm excited to do this, but I forgot my iPad. Hang on. Much better. iPad and some tea. Okay, so welcome to Noel's Spare Parts, we're calling the channel. And yeah, this is to do a couple things. First of all, is to celebrate the 4-year channel anniversary, which is pretty cool. I'm not gonna go back in retrospectives of this last year. There's been a lot of growth. It's been an odd year because of the move to the US, and I'm not making as many videos. Hopefully that will all change next year. But the main thing that I wanted to do with this channel is to allow me to post videos without worrying about the main channel. And we'll probably get into some of that in some of these questions, but there is a certain pressure that a video on the main channel needs to perform a certain way. And I know in the past I've stopped myself from doing certain videos because I thought, they're not gonna do well enough for that channel. Well, this is what this is about. Even if it grows, I don't care. I'm gonna put here whatever I want without having to worry about those things. A lot of people will not care, and that's fine. They don't have to subscribe. But I know a lot of you want to have maybe more in-depth content or uncut content or just things that are maybe not going to appeal to as many people. So this is the place. You're in the right place. And to kick off this channel, what I asked supporters on Patreon, YouTube, and Discord is if they had any specific questions, and we can do a quick, I don't know if it's very quick, a QA session about anything. I didn't put any parameters, let people ask anything. So I'm not gonna be able to answer everything. There were too many questions suggested to fit into a reasonable amount of time, but if you guys enjoy this, we'll do it again some other time. Maybe not even wait for the 5th anniversary. Maybe we can do it before then. Maybe when I go full time on this, which will definitely happen before the 5th anniversary. Fingers crossed. Okay, so I was looking at the questions, and there are 3 very clear categories. And the first one is just retro in general. So let's just start from the top. So Tron Magnum, long time supporter of the channel, one of the earliest names that I remember from the very first year, I think, asked me this. I'm pretty sure I know what your favorite 8-bit computer is. Yes, I've said it many times before, and heck, even the t-shirt. My favorite retro computer is the Amstrad CPC, specifically 6128. And a lot of it is just, that's the computer that I grew up with. That's the computer, it wasn't the first computer that I interacted with, but it's the one that I owned. And it's the one that I really took it to the next level, went deep into it, learned the ins and outs of the hardware. Although, it's funny, at the time, I thought I knew the ins and outs of the hardware. Now I feel that I'm just starting to scratch the surface, even though I know a lot more than I did back in the 80s. So that's kind of funny. Anyway, that's not his. That was just a side note on his question. What I would like is information on what systems you grew up with. Yeah, mostly that one. Before that, my really first computer was one of those small pocket Casio. What's it? FX 8000. I don't know. One of those that you could actually had a little tiny keyboard and like an LCD screen just with a row of characters. That's where I learned BASIC. My dad got one of those. He was a math teacher at high school level, and I don't know exactly why he got one of those for work-related things, and he was learning BASIC with that, and I was just kind of like very interested from the beginning. I'm like, I want to see that. And so I remember typing programs from the manual, and I even wrote my first game ever on that computer. So I made some kind of like guacamole kind of thing, because you only had 8 characters, so the character would come up really quickly, and you would have to like hit the key for that. Anyway, that was the first game that I ever wrote. Yeah, what I learned to program on, mostly the Amstrad CPC, BASIC, and then immediately assembly when it was clear that I was not able to make the kind of games that I was seeing commercially available with BASIC. So that's when like, how do they do this? Assembly, okay, that's what I have to do. All right, next question. Zach Baggings is asking me, what retro computer is easiest to work on and find parts for? In your opinion, for beginners, right, in your opinion, for beginners, asking for a friend. So that's a really good question. And the answer is going to depend on where you live. I'm going to start with Europe, just because I'm probably most familiar with that answer there. In Europe, really, I would say, and I'm probably very biased, I think some of the best computers to start repairing them would be ZX Spectrums and probably Amstrad CPCs. And especially the ZX Spectrums, one of the main things is they're so cheap, or they used to be. They're probably not as cheap as they used to be. So I really started doing ZX Spectrums and Amstrad repairs, I don't know now, like 10 years ago, and you could get them for so cheap, almost like just the price of shipping. Like, oh yeah, $10. Now people, it's the opposite. I think they have, oh, this like heirloom computer. Like I've never tested it, but I'm sure it's worth $500. So I still think that ZX Spectrums are a really good place to start because you can replace everything, even the ULA in a pinch. Amstrad CPCs are a little bit more expensive. They're also relatively easy to repair. So I think those are two of the best ones. In the US, that's a tougher question. There's Commodore 64s. They're not the easiest computer to repair. I have to be honest about it. There's a lots of systems going on, lots of things that could go wrong. I mean, they're fun to tinker with, and you can learn a lot just by swapping chips and examining, especially if you have an oscilloscope, what changes and what things get better. But it's not the easiest system to fix. Apple IIs are relatively inexpensive, but not nearly as cheap as a ZX Spectrum. So I guess I would just go with those two just because they're so easily available. And even if you're learning and you do something horrible and you destroy one of those boards, it's not the end of the world. It's not, it's not like an Amiga computer. So an Amiga would be the last thing to try, by the way. Like 16 bits makes it way more difficult. And then they're also already much more expensive, much more complicated, much to get parts for and understand even. So yeah, definitely stick to an 8-bit computer. Something like that. I think those are really good options. Next up, we have Demian. He's asking me, what rare, obscure computers would you like to get your hands on? The honest answer is I am not itching anymore to get rare, obscure computers. You've seen it before. I have quite a few computers in my collection. I typically like to have one of each major kind, and I'm typically not excited to just get weird variants and things like that. Having said that, I'm definitely interested in the Archimedes line of computers. That is something that I have never gotten. I even tried getting one before Brexit, thinking, okay, this is my last chance to be able to import that into Spain easily, not even import it, just have it shipped without any customs thing. And it just never happened. So that is one that I would like to tinker with. But honestly, I have already so many computers that I am happy going back to the ones I have, learning more things about it. I'm more excited about new peripherals, new accessories, new software even designing things for them. I'm much more excited about that than I am about just getting a whole brand new computer. I have plenty of semi-odd computers already that I need to explore more. I want to play more with the enterprise computer. So many more in there. So yeah. And related to that, Retrobard is asking me, do you keep tabs on the local Craigslist? And Craigslist actually stands for Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, whatever. The answer is yes. So even though I'm not dying to get new obscure computers, I do keep tabs on that, mostly for computers that I already have. This doesn't happen much anymore, but I'm always looking for big piles of computers that I already know that maybe have been sitting in storage and they need repairs, and so they'll be great projects, and then I either sell them or give them away. The thing that mostly excites me is to find maybe new accessories, new cards for systems that I already have. So I have searches for Commodore 64, Atari, things like that. I've been getting into some consoles as well, even though I haven't featured them much in the channel. So I do have some Nintendos, originals, Super Nintendo doesn't even work. I actually got some Xboxes recently. If we could just look through the doors in there. I'll put some B-roll. I have a pile of, God, it's like 6 Xboxes, original Xboxes, sitting on top of each other, and the Xboxes are kind of to me, it's borderline retro. Like, it doesn't output HDMI natively, and it doesn't do widescreen. I mean, it does, but not native. So to me, it's the borderline of retro. But I actually had a lot of fun going back to it because it was the first console that I worked for professionally. So it definitely has a lot of memories there. And I haven't had a PC computer for a long time, a modern PC computer. So it's actually really fun to go and play some games as a PC, kind of like a PC in a box kind of thing. So yeah, I've been having fun with that. I haven't featured any videos on it. I may do something, but it's definitely not your typical main channel fare. Okay, next question from Thomas Euler, not sure, sorry. How many unfinished projects do you have in parallel? And if so, how do you deal with that? And he's telling me that he's embarrassed by the number of ongoing parallel projects that he has. Surprisingly, I don't have many parallel projects. I don't do well with parallel projects. For a while, when I was really trying to make a video every week, I was having to pipeline my videos. So I would be thinking of one, ordering parts for another, working another one, and editing another one. And yeah, I didn't like it. It was throwing me off, having so many things. I wasn't able to focus well in each of them. I really need to do more of that, because a lot of times you start a project and they're like, oh, I need to order parts, and those are going to take a couple of weeks to get here, especially if they're not coming from within the country. But really, of just projects sitting there, especially like maybe even non-video projects, I don't like to have multiple things. I like to do one and finish it, or somehow be done with it and not finish it. What I have is tons of unfinished projects and tons of projects that I have parts for, and even donations that people have sent me, either computers or parts or replacement chips or something that I want to get to eventually, but I'm not starting until I'm hoping to finish it. Okay, and the last retro-related question is from Nateo87. What advice do you give to folks who are expressing interest in electronics? So that I actually have a whole idea for a whole video about this. So I'm just going to give you the really short version, which is learn the very basics and start doing stuff. And really, I think that just applies to everything in life, not just electronics. At least for me, I'm very much someone who learns by doing. I learn by doing. So when I'm learning something, anything, a programming language, a new skill, a new language, but I mean like human language, once I have like the very basic thing, but the very basic, I mean like something you can learn in an hour, I set myself some kind of a project, and then I start working on that project, even if it's the Hello World. Okay, how do we get Hello World on this new platform? I think that's the best way to do electronics as well. Specifically, what I don't like about traditional electronics education, it's what I had, and that's where my whole video idea goes into, is that for me, I learned true electronics at the college level, at university. And the problem was really the name of the course. The name of the course was circuit analysis. And so it wasn't about designing a circuit to do something. It wasn't about modifying something to get some output. It was the opposite. It was like the emphasis is, here is a circuit. What is the voltage here? What is the current here? If I put this signal in this node, what is going to be the output signal over here? And so we spent 2 or 3 years doing things like that. And yet I aced all the classes, but I didn't feel that I truly knew electronics back then. I had to relearn everything when I started with retro electronics and saying, okay, how do I fix this thing? Like, oh, okay. so many things that I had no idea. So I enjoy a lot more approaching things from a design point of view. Even repairing them is still, you're trying to do something, and then you repair enough things that you start like, oh, now I could do this and I could do this, and I started dabbling in making my own hardware, and I want to be doing more of that. So I think repairing especially retro computers, because they're so easy to understand, is not a bad way to start. Okay, next set of questions is about YouTube and video making. So Control-Alt-Reese of the YouTube channel of fame, if you're not subscribed, you should go subscribe to his channel right away, asks me, what was your inspiration for setting up the channel? So here's the deal. Reese and I have almost like a parallel history. We were both posting pictures on Instagram at the time. So and this must have been, this was like 5-6 years ago. So I was doing a lot of repairs, mostly repairs. I would just buy really cheap computers, repair them, restore them, and resell them. And I was really enjoying the process, and I started taking pictures of what I was doing. And then because the pictures were kind of cool, I thought anyway, from a geeky retro point of view, I made an Instagram account, which I never had, and started putting pictures about that. And people seemed to enjoy it. I mean, it was never a success. I never really did much with it, but enough that people were really following that and enjoying that. And that's how I got to know Reese. He was also posting pictures at the time of similar things. And the reason for the channel is that people kept asking for more. It's like, hey, I really want to see how you did this. Could you please make a video about it? And I just kept telling people, no. Videos just take way too much time. I'd be crazy to get into that. So I kept dismissing it for a long time, and until just one day I eventually said, you know what, maybe it could be fun to do it. So that was the turning moment. And so that's related to his next question, which is, any big tech channels that you've been watching for years that inspire you to finally take the plunge and give this a go yourself? Yes. So without that, I probably wouldn't have thought about doing that. So at the time I was watching the 8-Bit Guy, and I think some of his, not so much repairs, he didn't do that many repairs, but like some of his restorations and retrobrighting definitely like, oh, look, people are also dealing with the physical aspect of computers, not just the repairs. I was definitely watching him. Jan Bita, I was watching his channel as well. But probably the most technically interesting and in-depth channel that I ever watched, probably also with the worst production values, was a great channel called Joules per Coulomb. So any of you retro old-timers who are into Spectrum, ZX Spectrum repairs, you know him. I never saw his face, never showed his face in the videos. I don't know what happened. He stopped publishing videos a long time ago. But I learned so much about ZX Spectrum repairs. And you could tell he was really into that and like had so much knowledge. It wasn't just about electronics, but he's like, oh, I just measured the resistance between pin 12 and of the Z80 and I said Z80 without thinking about it since it was a British channel. How about that? Anyway, I measured pin resistance between pin and this and somewhere in the expansion port. And if you don't have 250 ohms, then there's something wrong with it. It's like, wow. I mean, you can only learn by doing hundreds of those things. So yeah, I learned tons from him. They're long videos, kind of drawn out, but if you're into that, it's definitely worth going back to those. Next one from Stephen Go. The production and presentation of your channel has always been good quality. I'm gonna disagree with that, but let's keep going. Were you making other videos before starting the channel? Other channels, you can see the progression from older videos, but you seem to hit the ground running. Okay. I disagree with that completely. So just go back and watch my first video. My first video had horrible lighting, had an iPhone sitting there. I don't know why I had a light. I was using my desk light behind my phone, so you can see my phone shadow on my chest. Anyway, so the production quality I thought was pretty horrible. I had no idea about video editing and anything else. So I learned video editing the way I was saying that I like to learn new things. Like, oh, I need to do this. how do I do this, right? And it just started. I was watching other YouTube videos about editing. I watched a really good class in Skillshare. This Belgian guy, I don't know his name. I'll put a link. It was a really good class for learning Premiere. But and actually that was really good after I had been struggling with it for 6 years, for 6 months. That's another really good tip about learning things. I like to struggle with something and try to do my best and see how I can do it. And after I've been struggling with that for a while, then someone shows me, oh, there's this way. And it's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. That's how I like to learn things. And so I watched that class after probably I've been making videos for 6-8 months. So, but I haven't stopped learning since then. So I like to think that my production quality keeps getting better and better in editing and pacing and everything. So, but thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed those early videos too. Okay, another question about YouTube from More Fun Making It. He also has a great YouTube channel. Definitely check it out. Do you feel YouTube is pushing you to make a certain type of content? And are you resisting that pressure? That's an interesting question too. Well, they're interesting, otherwise I wouldn't have selected them. But is YouTube pushing me in a certain direction for content? If I'm going to answer the question exactly, I'm going to say no. I'm pushing myself. So, but okay. So I don't think YouTube is doing that. YouTube is encouraging the focus of the videos, the thumbnail and the title. I try not to be clickbaity, but I try to use that approach. Veritasium talked about that a couple of years ago. Veritasium was one of my favorite YouTube channels. So he said, without being clickbaity, titles that pose a question are really effective because people see that and they're like, oh, I wonder, I have this question. I wonder what that is. And they click on the video. And then if you deliver on that question, then it's really not clickbait. So it's definitely making me focus the presentation of the video that way. So I think the main thing that I've been feeling some pressure to do is that I want the main channel videos to do reasonably well. And one of the reasons is that I've been getting some sponsors. So that's one of the main ways that I've been funding this whole thing. In sponsors, I've learned they like to just look at the last 5 or 10 videos and average them out. And so it doesn't matter if you have over 100,000 over here and 80,000 here. If you have a few videos that are 10,000, that's really going to bring it down. So if I know that a video is going to perform really badly, then this is the new channel that where it's going to show up. And I'm going to try to make the main channel ones that are more with a broader appeal. So this channel is my way of avoiding some of that pressure and really being able to do what I want. I mean, primarily, the topics that I use is really whatever I'm interested on at the time, that's what I end up making a video. Because even though my videos are trying to be better and better produced, I'm still thinking of them as I'm inviting somebody in the lab and, hey, look at the cool things that I'm doing, except that we're going to do it really condensed in a way that in 20 minutes, I can give you a really cool experience. So that's my goal right now. All right, and a few questions for the last topic, which is game development. Because I mentioned multiple times that my main job is I'm a game developer and I'm an independent game developer. I've been independent game developer for many, many years, like 16, 18 years. I don't even know anymore. So Toto-T2E2, wow. Toto-T2E2 asked me, I would love to know more about your gaming development. What games did you develop? So I'll put a link at the Moby Games page. That's weird with credits in games industry and all that. I've worked in more games that are listed there, and half of the games listed there I didn't work on. I'm there because somebody put me thanks in the credits, or they used some open source library that I worked on and they put it there. So no, I didn't work in Serious Sam, even though I'm credited there, and I would love to have worked in that game, but I guess maybe I've helped in some way. The main games that I worked on when I started working, I don't have that many titles, so I can just rattle them off the top of my head. Actually, I have them here. So yeah, these are the main professional games that I've worked on. I started working on, when I was hired initially at Mayo Glass Interactive in 1998. So yeah, not super high quality game development, but these were for Hasbro, Missile Command and Battleship, like PC remakes at the time. They have some good things. I learned tons working on these games. It was really fun working at that company because I still feel this was an all-time game company. The whole team, we were like 10, 12 people, including artists and designers and producers and programmers. So it was just really cool. It really felt like almost still the 80s. I mean, it was late 90s, but it felt that way. And then at Day One Studios, that's when we started doing console development. There was also a PlayStation version of one of these ones, Missile Command, I think. And then when the Xbox came out, we did MechAssault 1 and MechAssault 2. MechAssault 1 was a big leap for me because I was the technical lead there. MechAssault 2 was more of the same, and once we started talking about doing MechAssault 3, then I left. I couldn't take that anymore. And then I moved to California, San Diego, and joined Sammy Studios, and there we released Darkwatch. I'm in the credits for Darkwatch, but honestly, I must have written a few hundred lines of code. I was mostly on the tech side of things, but it's a really cool game. It was Xbox and PlayStation 3. No, PlayStation? PlayStation. Yeah, PlayStation. And then the Bourne Identity. Again, I didn't do much at all. I'm probably credited as just tech. I did some of the initial... This is using the Unreal Engine, so I did some of the initial search for that and adapting things, but mostly at the time I was in the tech team for that. So those are my commercially published games, and everything else, it was just things and things like that. Then I went independent, started a company with a friend. We started making a PlayStation 3 downloadable game. It never worked out. And when we decided that didn't work out, the iPhone had just come out. And so that's when I started my independent, by myself, game development career. So I released very few things. I'm really slow making games, apparently. I released a game/app called Flower Garden, and that was super, super popular. It's a really interesting story. I can talk about it sometime. It may have been one of the first games with in-app purchases. And I tried not to make them evil. Anyway, there's a whole story. I wrote a bunch of stuff in my old blog. You can find things about it if you're interested. Then the next big game I released was Casey's Contraptions with a friend of mine. It did pretty well. And then the really cool thing about it is that Rovio, the creators of Angry Birds, decided that they wanted to buy it from us. So they bought it. So that was great. They paid a good amount of money. And then they took it over. They made it into Amazing Alex. They set up a whole team about it, apparently, and worked on it for a while, and it didn't work out for them, which probably means it wasn't as successful as Angry Birds. And unfortunately, they took it off the store. So now neither our version nor theirs is available, which is a shame. And the last sort of big one that I released was like 5-6 years ago, maybe more than that. It was called Subterfuge, and it was the tagline is a week-long game of diplomacy and strategy. So yeah, it was like a real-time strategy game that lasts between 1 week and 2 weeks. So that, I think, was probably the game that I'm most proud of. I think it was the best game that I've worked on, and it was the least financially successful. Go figure. That always happens, right? I'm kind of jumping around in questions because Tim asked me which project was the most successful for you, that you are most proud of, and which ones turned to be a failure. So I think the one that I'm most proud of is Subterfuge. I think it's an amazing game from a game design point of view. So one thing I haven't mentioned is that I was in tech. I was doing a really hardcore technology when I was working for game companies in the games industry. But ever since I went independent, I shifted my focus to game design. So programming became a tool, and what I shifted my focus was game design. It's kind of like the dual class characters, like you're a fighter up until level 7, and then you switch and you start being a mage. Same thing. Which one turned out to be a failure? So I've made some games since Subterfuge that I had to unfortunately cancel because my least favorite part of making games is the time leading up to the release and the actual release. That's all the polish, the balancing, the marketing. I hate the marketing. And I had been working on a game called Lasting Legacy, which I was really excited about. We actually worked on that for over a year, I think. And I managed to convince myself that it was just not going to do that well, that it's just going to be blah. And I didn't want to put myself through the pain of the last year or more just to release a blah game. So ended up canceling that. And, you know, canceling a game is one of the hardest things you can do. It's, because I say it feels like a failure. It was a failure in the sense that we didn't ship it. I don't know, maybe sometime I still need to go back to it. I think it had some really cool ideas in it. Last question about game development from Simon Barnes. As you're a game developer, would you ever think about developing a commercial retro game for something like the Spectrum, Commodore 64, BBC, or Amstrad? And the answer is hell yes. So right now I'm working on a game, still unannounced. We're definitely announcing it in December, so I'll be mentioning it in the channel and all that. And we'll be launching the game in the spring. Once we do that, I'm going to stop commercial game development for a while, potentially indefinitely, and I want to focus on the channel. But at the same time, I also want to write games for these retro platforms. I'm not even going to make them commercial. I'm not going to try to make any money from them because I don't think there's money to be made, not anything worth the effort that you need to put into it. So everything I do is just going to be open source, released, all that. I already started working on an Amstrad game. Last Christmas, I started working on this like mining asteroids kind of game, and I want to continue with that. So yes, absolutely. I'm starting with the Amstrad, but I would love to be able to make games for some of the other platforms. And it's really fun because it's approaching those platforms with the modern knowledge about those platforms and knowing all that we know today, and with modern tools. So you can do things that you really couldn't do back in the day. So, okay, I finished the list. I finished the tea. I think this video is long enough. So sorry if I wasn't able to get to your question. We'll probably do this again. So whenever that happens, fire off any questions you want again. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll have more of these informal videos and other kind of long form or whatever I feel like doing in this channel. So until that video, I'll see you then.